Hi, welcome to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. You're listening to the daily Hindu news analysis with current affairs news leads with Arjun R Shankar. Today we are discussing the important news of 13th December 2022. Before we move on, in today's news, we do not have the editorial section because I am going to come up with a new important section called the editorial summaries for 2023 examination. So this will be commencing soon. So I will add the editorials in the special exclusive session where the editorials will be analyzed from the Hindu, Indian Express, Times of India, Business Line, and other important newspaper. Whenever I feel that there is an important news that we should be learning for civil services examination, that will be covered according to the syllabus. So editorial summaries will be very helpful for you to keep in touch with all the editorials and get the prelims and mains questions and topic explanation from each area. So that will be coming to you soon within a day. Moving on to the first news lead of the day. The Indian Chinese soldiers clash in Arunachal Pradesh. So, GS Paper 2 International Relations recently again after the 2020 June 15 episode, where more than 20 Indian soldiers were killed. After this, uh, India and Chinese forces have clashed together in Arunachal Pradesh or GS Paper 2. So, this brings us to an important question regarding what is RALP or rest of Arunachal Pradesh, and what do you mean by line of actual control? And line of actual control is divided into which all areas? And you should know that the RALP, according to the military parlance, is an area in Arunachal Pradesh other than the Kamang area. So recently, before till 2010, there was only one division to look after the entire RALP. So this is very strategically important. The rest of and please do find out about this. And the Indian and Chinese soldiers suffered minor injuries during this time, and the both sides have immediately disengaged from the area. It is noted that in certain areas along the LAC in Tawang sector, there are the areas of differing perception, and there is a lot of problems. So you should know where is Tawang. Where can you find the Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh? So this is the first such incident after the June 15, 2020 episode when 20 Indian soldiers were killed in the Ladakh's Galwan Valley. And you should also know that this is not the first time that the area in Arunachal Pradesh has been seen a face-off between the Indian and Chinese troop. Since the boundary is undefined, Indian and Chinese troops often engage in fights. So there is no boundary is still undefined, and you should know that the LAC. What is LAC? The line of actual control is divided into western, middle, and eastern. The western part has the Ladakh in, and the middle has the Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and Sikkim and eastern Arunachal Pradesh sectors. So, and eastern is actually the Arunachal Pradesh, and the middle has Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Sikkim, and eastern is Arunachal Pradesh sector. So you should know, read more about the details from GS Paper 2 International Relations and GS Paper 3 Security Perspective. Moving on to the next important one, retail inflation falls below 6% mark for first time in 2022. So this also brings us an important topic in GS Paper 3 Economy. What do you mean by retail inflation? And what is the difference between core inflation and headline inflation? So recently, the article said that the cooling down has happened. The vegetable and edible oil prices drove India's retail inflation to the prices of the vegetable and edible oil prices have cooled down and has brought the India's retail inflation to 5.8% to 6.7% in October. This is the first time since January that the consumer prices has risen slower than the 6% tolerance threshold. You know that the RBI has got a tolerance level of 6%, and after so many time the rate is 5.8%, has come below the 6% tolerance threshold of the RBI. And you should know, what do you mean by the retail inflation? The retail inflation means, it specifically, we have already discussed it many number of times, is the consumer price index, CPI. The retail inflation is basically the CPI, which is a weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services. And you should know that the core inflation rate is the price change of goods and services minus the food and energy. Because in core inflation, you cut down the food and energy, because the prices of food and energy products are highly volatile. They change so quickly that including these categories can give you an inaccurate reading of the severity of inflation. So that is why core inflation is the rate of change of goods and services minus food and energy, because they are very volatile. And the retail inflation is called as the CPI, consumer price index inflation. And the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI, is responsible for compiling the data, and the RBI monitors it very prudently. And what do you mean by core inflation? And you should know what you mean by headline inflation. So it's very simply putting together, it is the core inflation refers to inflation based on the consumer price index, covering the inflation of all goods and services except food, fuel, excise duty, income tax, and other financial investments. So you should know that the core inflation refers to the difference between inflation of all items in the CPI and the inflation of food and petroleum. So you should know that it is based on the CPI, except covers all the goods and services except the volatile food and fuel prices. You can see in the picture all the goods and services, volatile food and fuel prices, excise duties, income tax are actually excluded from the purview of core inflation. And the core inflation is the best indicator of a long term inflation trends for a monetary policy, because and what do you mean by the headline inflation? Headline inflation is the total inflation in an economy that includes food, energy, everything. So the headline inflation is very being more volatile, cannot be used to calculate inflation trends, and is often substituted with the core inflation. So what do you think is the best thing? When you have the WPI is a whole index, so calculating the whole index, the whole thing is actually not taking into account the volatility of the market. So that is basically the difference between headline inflation and the core inflation. Moving on to the next one was the artist upset. The artists were really upset as the Binale opens without the main show. So this has brought us to another important area of GS paper 1, history and culture, which says that where is the Muziris? It's a historical place, so you need to understand where can you find Muziris. So the story of Muziris is as old as 3000 BC, when the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Egyptians came to the Malabar coast in search of spices. And they gradually came to Muziris or Kodungalur in Kerala. So the Kranganur or Kodungalur became world famous for all the people and got into the world map. Known as the spice city to ancient reporters, Muziris was known as Murichipattanam. The Murichipattanam is also mentioned in Ramayana during one of the activities of Sugriva. And even the Sangam literature describes Roman ships coming to Muziris with gold to be exchanged for pepper. So when you talk about such Binale happening, you should know what is the historical importance of Muziris town. Next is development model that shuns shortcuts for political gain needed GS paper 2 welfare. So the article talks about the elections and giving freebies. So the article really talks about that there is no point in giving freebie culture in electoral politics. Just that you offer something for the people as freebie, that you will be given a mixie, you will be given a washing machine, TV, etc., are not enough in a democracy like India. You should shift to long term moves that bring in good governance and transparency. So the freebie or giving anything to get votes is just a shortcut. In democracy like India, we should be shifting to good governance and transparency versus this freebie culture. So you can be, this article is important in the concept of GS paper 2 welfare, and also whenever you want to write something, an article on polity and governance, you can use this as more transparent, good governance needed rather than election freebie. And it also talks about the Jan Dhan Yojana. So you should know welfare. So Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is a national mission for financial inclusion to ensure access to financial services. So under the scheme, a basic savings bank account can be opened in any branch of the bank, or through banking mitra or business correspondence. And Once the saving bank account is opened for even an unbanked person, there is no requirement to maintain any minimum balance, and the interest is earned on the deposit in the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So, under the scheme, a basic savings bank account can be opened in any bank branch. So, know about Jan Dhan Yojana and how it has performed. How long will Ashish Mishra remain in jail without bail? Our Supreme Court. So, Supreme Court, this also brings us the popular Lakhimpur Kheri violence. We have already discussed about the Lakhimpur Kheri case, and how long should the Ashish Mishra, Union Minister's son, accused, be in the jail without bail? So, this is something that talks about the case, bail, etc. Moving on, Supreme Court to consider a plea for early listing of review petition by Bilkis Banu. So this again, GS paper 2 law brings us to another important area. What do you mean by what is the Bilkis Banu case? So the Bilkis Banu was 20. We already discussed this in previous sessions. So Bilkis Banu case is she was 21 years old and 5 months pregnant when she was gang raped, and during the Godhra train burning incident, and uh, the 11 men convicted in the case walked out of the Godhra sub jail on August 15. So Bilkis Banu is giving a petition against this. Jay Shankar to attend meetings on UNSC reform and terrorism. This brings us a very important concept. What is norms? New orientation for reformed multilateralism is a topic that has been discussed, and also the External Affairs Minister will visit New York to participate in this program. And apart from norms, there is also global approach to counter terrorism, challenges and way forward. What do you mean by new orientation for reformed multilateralism? So India will engage in a new dialogue in December. International relations. The Rajya Sabha passes futuristic energy conservation bill to further regulate carbon emission. This is a big topic, and this brings us to a lot of question here. The futuristic energy conservation bill. I'll give you a mains question. What are carbon markets and why are they important? Discuss. So you need to know this article talks about what is green hydrogen, what is a carbon market, what is energy conservation building code, and what is the Energy Conservation Act 2001. So what is the difference between Energy Conservation Act and the Energy Conservation Bill? So let's discuss all these concepts. And in this, basically, the Rajya Sabha passed this, and it said that the amendment bill clearing the deck will be mandatedly use of non-fossil sources, including green hydrogen, green ammonia, biomass, and ethanol for energy and feedstock, and establishing a carbon market in the country. So the bill is giving a good impact on India's effort for a greener energy. And also, the bill aims to bring large residential buildings with minimum connected load of 100 kilowatt or contract demand of 120 kilovolt ampere within the fold of energy conservation regime. And it will also enhance the energy conservation building code and impose penalty provisions, increase members in the governing council of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, make changes in that. And the Energy Conservation Act, which deals with saving energy, and the present bill deals with saving environment and conserving climate change due to usage of fossil and non-fossil fuels. So the Energy Conservation Act deals with saving energy, but this bill, Energy Conservation Bill, deals with saving energy and conserving climate change with the usage of fossil and non-fossil fuels while generating electricity. So it's a bit different from the act. And let's know what do you mean by the carbon market. Carbon markets are trading system in which carbon credits are sold and bought. So one tradable carbon credit equals 1 ton of carbon dioxide or the equivalent amount of different greenhouse gas reduced, sequestered, or avoided. So one tradable carbon credit equals to 1 ton of carbon dioxide or the equivalent amount of green gas. So there are two type of carbon markets that you can find in India. One is the compliance market and the voluntary market. So the voluntary carbon markets means national and international, and the demand, basically you should know the voluntary carbon markets mostly come from the private entities. So the compliance market are a result of national, regional, and international policy, and the voluntary carbon comes from private entities. So know about the carbon credit and what do you mean by the energy conservation building code or ECBC. The Energy Conservation Building Code was launched in 2007, and the purpose of Energy Conservation Code is to provide minimum requirements for energy efficient design and construction of buildings and their systems without compromising on the comfort of the occupant. So, it is a minimum requirement for energy efficiency, the Energy Conservative Building Code or ECBC. So, very important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, clean energy and energy. Moving on to the next is benefits of policy on rare diseases not reaching patients. This is another important area regarding GS paper 2 health. I'll give you another mains question. What is a rare disease? Discuss the national policy of rare diseases NPRD and its purpose in this regard. So you need to know what is national policy on rare diseases and what is a rare disease. Know about lysosomal storage disorder, the Gaucher disease and Pompe disease. So the Gaucher disease and Pompe disease. What do you mean by all these things? You need to have an idea regarding this. So the recently the Rajya Sabha NCP leader Fauzia Khan has raised concerns regarding the national policy of rare diseases. So she said that according to the theory, the funding support has increased to over 50 lakh per patient suffering from a rare disease, and the unending delay and lack of urgency has created uh, several problems for the young lives and endangered the several people who are suffering from rare diseases like lysosomal storage disorders, Gaucher disease and Pompe disease, MPS 1, 2, and Fabry disease. So these are some of the rare diseases, and early diagnosis of a rare disease is major challenge owing to variety of factors that include lack of awareness among primary care physicians. So, to address all these challenges, a very comprehensive national policy for rare diseases 2021 has been finalized by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So, the rare diseases policy aims to lower the high cost of treatment for rare diseases, and it can even has a provision for support to up to 20 lakhs, which has been increased up to 50 lakhs in the case of this. So, and the beneficiary is not only limited to BPL families, but it will be extended to about 40% of the population who are eligible under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. And the support of 20 lakhs to 50 lakhs will be under the umbrella scheme of Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi. So all these are very important. So please do know about what do you mean by rare disease, what is National Policy of Rare Diseases or NPRD. And the leader has actually said that there is a lot of urgency and delay in implementing all this. So know about this. Government to turn 36,000 villages as model tribal villages. So this brings us another important area of GS paper 2. What do you mean by the model villages, the model tribal villages? Because the Union Ministry of Tribal Affairs is making the model tribal villages, and this is a part of the existing SCA or Special Central Assistance to Tribal Subscheme, which is called as SCA to TSS, which has now been the Special Central Assistance to Tribal Subscheme has been renamed to Pradhan Mantri Adi Adarsh Gram Yojana or PMAAGY, Pradhan Mantri Adi Adarsh Yojana for 2021 to 2025-26. So this is important regarding the scheduled tribes in India. Know about this. And moving on is regarding remove offending allegations in petitions against conversion, say Supreme Court. This is GS paper 1 and 2, Society and Law. The Supreme Court took serious note of a Christian organization's objection, saying that it is vexatious and scandalous allegations made against minority religions by a petitioner, saying that the minority religion is making massive forcible religious conversions and creating a large number of rapes, murders in the name of conversion. So the minority religions have countered their position against the petitioner, claiming forceful conversions by the minority. So know what do you mean by a forceful conversion, GS paper 2 law. Don't delay scheme for madrasas, house panels tell center. GS paper 2 schemes and welfare. So this brings us an important topic called as, what do you mean by SPEM? The SPEM means Scheme for Providing Education to Madrasas or Minorities. So the Parliament Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment pulled up the government on delay in approving the SPEM. SPEM means providing scheme for providing education to madrasas or minorities. And the scheme has two sub schemes, SPQM, which is scheme for providing quality education in madrasas and infrastructure development of minority institutes, or IDMI. And previously, this was actually done by the Ministry of Minority Affairs, and now it has been given to the Ministry of Education in 2021. So that is very important. Previous, now it is given to the Ministry of Education from Minority Affairs. So SPEM is scheme for providing education to madrasas and minorities. So please do remember about this. And more than 11,000 children killed or wounded in Yemen since 2015. You know that a lot of human rights violations, and Yemen's Saudi-backed government and Iran-aligned the Houthis have been escalating an economic war, even amidst the UN efforts for a truce. So you need to know from international relations who are the Houthis, and what is the Yemen crisis, what is the problem happening in Yemen, what is the problem happening in Yemen, and world geography perspective, where is Yemen located? You should take a look at that. In near to Saudi Arabia and near to Oman, you can see Yemen situated, and one position it has the Arabian Sea, and it definitely has the Gulf of Aden. And slowly on the left hand and right lower side, you can see that Yemen is actually connected to Red Sea. Red Sea is actually one of the area has been Red Sea, and the second area is the Gulf of Aden, and next is the Arabian Sea. And slowly in the lower portion, you have Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and African countries. And know the geography of Yemen here. Pakistan expecting multi-billion dollars from Saudi. So it is actually expecting a 7 billion IMF bailout package, and this multi-billion dollar financial support would definitely include boosting Pakistan's foreign reserves and oil on deferred payments. So Pakistan gets a support from Saudi. India can be a global leader in electrolyzers, green hydrogen. So GS Paper 3, Science and Technology. This has brought another important area. Recently, the India can become a global leader, exporter, and producer of electrolyzer, and global champion of green hydrogen. And this was regarding the G20 Sherpa meeting. And what do you mean by electrolysis? Very simple. Uh, Electrolyzer is an apparatus that produces hydrogen through chemical process capable of separating the hydrogen and oxygen molecules, of which water is composed using electricity. So electrolysis is a promising option for carbon-free hydrogen production from renewable and nuclear resources. So electrolysis is the process of using electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. So electricity is used to split water and hydrogen, and it normally takes place in a unit called electrolyzer. It is basically small, from it can range from small to big, and well suited for hydrogen production and large scale facilities. So electrolyzer is the apparatus and electrolysis is the process. And next is the industrial output contracts to 4%. And this article talks about, again, we have already discussed this, GS Paper 3 economy. You should know what is IIP. The overview of, you should know what is the index of industrial production, or IIP. The IIP is an index that indicates the performance of various industrial sectors of the economy. It is calculated and published by the Central Statistical Organization, the CSO, every month. And it measures the short term changes in the volume of production of a basket of industrial products during a given period, and choosing a base period. So 8 core industries of India represents around 40% of the weight. And the 8 core industries is something that you should also, what is IIP, and what is the 8 core industries? Whenever IIP comes, 8 core industries come, which are electricity, steel, refinery products, crude oil, coal, cement, natural gas, fertilizers. Even for the prelims exam, you should be ready. Which of the following contains in the 8 core sectors? So definitely know about this thing. So that's all for today's day, and uh, keep listening to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. Subscribe the channel and listen to the classes, make notes, and come for more such sessions.